We're dealing with people. People are complex. People are unpredictable.
Darn it.
But I'd also argue people are predictably unpredictable.
Yes. So, welcome to Unleashed Learning TV and the Unleashed Learning podcast for our podcast listeners. Now, if you're a school leader and you are getting ready to implement change, meaning you want to advance teaching and learning, bring it to the next level across the school, and you're either contemplating that or getting started for that, this is really the episode for you. So I've got Steven Trotter here. Now, Steven was a principal, system leader. He works in the Victorian Department of Education, working with leaders. And his new book, The Art of Skimming Stones, is here. Now, his book talks about something called the success team, which if you worked with us at Unleashed Learning, you know what a success team is. And this success team can really help you bring it all together through the stages of change. So this is an episode for you, your leadership team, people you care about, and I'd really, really encourage you to check this out. So here we go. Steven, welcome to Unleashed Learning TV and the Unleashed Learning podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to be here.
Steven, the reason I wanted to do this episode is, I read your new book. And one of the things that we do at Unleashed Learning is when Unleashed Learning comes to a school, the leaders are wanting to advance teaching and learning. So they want to move from good teaching to great teaching. And what we do at Unleashed Learning is a staged approach, but we put these success teams in place to build capacity and to ensure change lasts. Then I read your book and you're like, oh, he's talking about success teams. And I'm like, we got to talk. And also I was thinking this episode's really for those leaders who are those, it's almost like pre-contemplative stage of change. Like they're like, the teaching, we could go the next level, but they're thinking about it. So I'm hoping this episode helps them kind of put a little match under them to go, okay, let's hit the next step and here's how to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very doable, but we have to, I think, change our perspective and how we think about leading people. And particularly in, the work, and I'm rapt that we sort of cross paths and swap books, because in reading your book, I just saw so much synergy around the work you're doing and the work I'm doing. And we've got the teaching and learning and leadership sort of space here that we're both actively saying the same thing, which is brilliant.
That's why you're here. So let's jump into it. And for people who've worked with us, they'll know what a success team is. But so if they're listening going, oh, William, we know this part, but it'd be helpful to hear from their set of eyes or ears. But also people don't. So how do you define or think about what a success team is, Steven?
Yeah, and the first part of that is actually thinking about a really intentional process. As leaders, and you talk about this era of overwhelm, which I see through leaders all the time. And that overwhelm, when we talk about the layers of leadership, continues to grow because what we end up finding ourselves doing is being reactive all the time. And having that idea of being reactive is important. You have to, because we're dealing with people. People are complex. People are unpredictable.
Darn it.
But I'd also argue people are predictably unpredictable.
Yes.
So if we can accept the fact that people are going to throw things at us, we don't have to get emotional about that. I know some things catch us by surprise. There's always the odd thing that comes out that you're like, wow, I did not expect that. That's, again, people. But as we get that unpredictability of people, and if we don't have a real intentional plan about how we're actually going to manage that and stop and think, what we end up doing is creating this layering system. I sort of use the quote out of Shrek when he's talking to Donkey, and, ogres are like onions. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers. I think leadership is like an onion. And we have to pull those layers apart. And one of those things is actually, as we're leading improvement, knowing exactly having an intentional process about how we're going to do that and how we're going to be successful, and in a process that allows us to pivot, allows us to manage the unpredictability of people, but allows us to actually see this idea of a success team. And you talk about it, and I know you also say about the right people. And
you don't need everyone, just the right people.
The right people. But I also add to that and go, not the easy people.
Yes.
Because when we're talking about leading, and I refer to Rogers' diffusion of innovation curve, which was not about education, and it's not actually really about leadership. It's about technology diffusing through a community. But he uses the language we often use in leadership, like innovator, early adopter. And when we think about leadership, the easy option for us is to pick those early adopters, the
Mhm.
ones that go, "Yep, I'm in." They often don't need the why. They don't need a lot of leadership strategy because they're on board straight away. They often don't need a lot of prompting, a lot of the pre-work, a lot of the building of the generating the interest and the momentum, because they're risk takers. They want to be involved. Maybe they trust the leader. They're excited because it's new. They want to be a part of it. And that's great. And I'm not saying they're not the right people, but they're always the go-to. And they're also great for our ego, because I go, hey, I've got this new initiative. It's popped up. I've been doing. I'm in. I don't care what it is, Steve. I'm there. I trust you. You're on board. No one's ever said that to me, but they jump on board pretty quick. But what we actually have to do is think about this improvement process as as a linear line in some ways, even though improvement isn't. But these people are going to lead the successful momentum of who's next. So they're going to influence the next load of people to jump on
Right.
board. And in a lot of research, it talks about the majority of people need to be on board for improvement. No, no,
No.
not at all. Absolutely not.
No.
Improvement starts with one person engaging with a meaningful project that actually shows some level of success in where you're trying to head to.
Can I just stop you for just one
Yeah,
second, Stephen? Because one of the things that happens at Unleashed Learning is the beginning, the leaders get really excited about the work, and then they want to put everybody in. Now, when they take the Leadership Academy, we show how to do this, but I go, wait, no, 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 because you want to create this ripple effect. It takes time to get that to happen, and you don't want to burn people up, but they get excited because they really care about it. And then they want to, they go, we want to put everybody. I go, oh, hold on, hold on. And so that happens. I see that all the time. And also we also can burn people out real quickly, the ones that are those early adopters, because they so we have to manage that as well. So I just want to throw that out because
yeah,
let's just throw everybody in. No, 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 no,
no,
slow
no,
down.
no. And that success team doesn't always have. It's not a tidy. This
No.
is great. It's all working, because you actually want to have the transparency around problem solving as a whole team. So
Yes.
this isn't working. What do you reckon? This is what we did. This is what happened. You want that really clear transparency around improvement is not nice and tidy and has a nice little bow on top of it. Things are going to go wrong and we're going to have to move, but actually acknowledging that and showing and modeling how you work beyond that actually helps people feel more comfortable about the fact that they get to take a bit of a risk, maybe not get it right. And that's okay, because we're going to work together on this and solve the problems.
Together. I keep thinking the word together when you're saying that
Yeah,
because we're more willing to take risks when we're doing it together, right? I'm just,
oh,
thinking what you're
absolutely.
saying.
And for some people, risk is hard.
Mm.
Those innovators, early adopters, they don't think about it. They risk the other end, which in the diffusion curve is called laggards. I don't like that
Oh,
word.
that
In
term.
my model, they're called the measured team, because they're very measured about how they approach any change, whether it's improvement or any other change, because we're changing the type of coffee we're getting in the staff room. And it's not, I'll also say with that work in terms of the easy to lead, or in mine, it's the success team and the measured team right up the other end. It's also dynamic. It's not static. So
Mm.
that can change depending on the content, the the topic you're leading, because someone who's passionate in maths might be part of the success team, but then we might be looking at literacy or English, and they might be in the measured team because they're not confident or comfortable with that change. And so we know our people and we work through that, but we have to acknowledge that those people that are not ready will get their opportunity when we lead this process, and it takes time, and that's okay. I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not going to have conflict. They do need to be professional and be a part of the group, the building of the momentum, but they don't need to engage today, and that's okay. I'm going to be okay with that as a leader, because this success team is going to be exactly that. We're going to make sure they're successful. And they're not always going to be what people refer to as the easy to lead. Maybe you're going to have some people in there that are maybe a little bit more challenging for you to lead, but if they're successful, they're actually going to influence the next group in a really positive and meaningful way. So it's a really strategic and intentional decision around this success team. Because, like you said, if we always pick the easy to lead, we're actually adding to their overwhelm. They're
Yes.
saying yes, so they're doing everything, and we're actually not doing anything really well and deeply. So that idea of having a really intentional way, and I've got a reflection tool I use for that as well, which I call the 3 Cs. And it actually, with my leadership team, we can sit down and look at when we're deciding on what we're doing next, and we look at context. So we start to think about like which staff members might have the interest in that area or expertise, skills or training, background, those sort of things. Then we look at capacity, which is really important. Who already has things that they're involved with, and already are leading some projects, or capacity. We also have to consider external factors. Who's going through stuff at the moment that, even though they might be a good person to be on this team, now mightn't be the right time for them. So there's internal and external factors when we're talking about
It's a
capacity.
real art form. I mean, it's
Yeah,
really that art form to bring everyone together the way you're talking about it. And I just want to throw one thing out because
yeah,
you mentioned something. Sometimes the people that are I'm noticing that are cynical or the late adopters are actually just protecting their mental load because they are of overwhelm.
yeah,
The
yeah,
attitude is, oh, one more thing that's going to come and go.
yeah,
So a lot of people are just protecting themselves. Their mental load is overwhelmed and they don't want to, but it doesn't mean they don't care. It just the era that we're in. So I just want to flag that. It just made me think of that when you're saying that. Can oh, go
yeah.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and with that, when we're talking about those people that are not necessarily on board or engaging with that, what they're actually communicating with you that they need a different version of you to get on board with this project, and that's not being convinced, that's not being persuaded, that's actually leadership. They need a version of me that's different to the success team, and that will take time, but I'm going to work on what they need in order to understand this is going to value add to what they already do, or this is actually going to improve what we offer our kids. But saying that, providing a pile of research, giving them a book to read, or me telling them, hey, this is good, we're doing it, actually isn't a leadership strategy. They actually need that level of understanding the why, the how, and ultimately those people are thinking this is actually impacting their values and beliefs in what they're already doing. So I'm actually leading them to a different understanding, and that's on me. That's not on them.
It
But
connects you haven't worked with unleashed learning, but it also connects to how learning sticks.
yeah,
So it's about building this bridge. And so the leaders always say to us, you know what? When we learn, because they learn how learning sticks for everybody, they go, it's the same thing actually
yeah,
as building that bridge between who our team is and where we're trying to go and the content. So I gotta ask this question because this
yeah,
is the one. One of the things that can happen, which you kind of alluded to, is the leader just forces, I'm being kind of broad stroke, but they force everyone to do something, right? And then there's
yeah,
total resistance because of that. So, in that kind of early stage, and this is really the art of it, and you call it the art of skimming stones. I do want to
yeah,
use that art on purpose. The early stage, we have a way of doing this. I want to hear how do you start tapping on people's doors, if you will, to start getting some buy-in to get the success team started. That there's an art to that. So,
there
how
is.
do we
Yeah.
start that process?
I think again, I'm going to come back to this really intentional understanding of what and why you're doing what you're doing. Because as the senior leader in a school and my middle leadership team, if we don't get it, how are we actually going to be leading this work? And I mean collectively leading this work amongst our staff. Because I'll come back to this idea of convincing and persuading. That's not a strategy, and it's not a strategy that will stick. So what we need to firstly do is have a really good understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And then we actually need to make some intentional decisions about how we're going to do this. And that intentional decision doesn't map everything out in concrete, but it gives us a really clear pathway around where are we starting, how are we starting, and what's the learning that everyone needs to actually start to launch this. And one thing that often misses is, if we're looking at, say, a new strategy in writing, for example, we'll do 1 or 2 sessions on professional learning, and then we'll get into it. And then we might come back to some professional learning on it later.
Yeah.
But we have to really think about a sequence level of learning here, because when we're looking at this, we've got to introduce, and we know not everyone's going to be on board then. So how do we then build the momentum with the next team? And that success team becomes your leadership vehicle. We activate them to start presenting the work they're doing in the classroom. Come and have a look at us. Let's do some modeling. Let's get them to run the professional learning around what was working and what doesn't.
Steve, you're almost mapping what we do to Unleash
Yeah.
Learning. Literally,
And
you're
I
mapping what we do.
and
Like,
I can front load that. I haven't actually done your course. I've
yeah,
just
but I'm
read the
just
book.
like we do a leaders first approach so
Yeah.
that they learn it, they start modeling it, they determine then who the success team is. And also what we really are showing is that learning doesn't always stick in real time. So sometimes what happens is they've got a model. We've done an Unleashed Learning TV
Yeah.
episode of a principal in W who changed how he even did staff meetings to model, and use metacognition to da. But it may not be to the second year that they start to see change happen. And so they have to keep, because learning doesn't always stick in real time. And so you're almost mapping out what we do at Unleashed Learning. I didn't
There we go.
interview you for this, but I'm like, that's how it happens.
Well,
So,
and do you know the funny thing about the work I do? I've never sat down. I have personally, because I've got a really strong interest in it, but leaders don't sit down and learn how adults learn.
that's right.
And
Yes.
and we have to understand that adults don't learn in the same way as our kids.
Mhm.
There's a whole level of autonomy that's required, and autonomy doesn't mean isolation. We have to acknowledge the expertise and values and things that people bring into that staff room. And when we understand that, all of a sudden I can walk into my staff room, and when someone challenges me, and I'll still put a little asterisk, it has to still be professional and respectful. And if it's not, that's improved. That's a performance discussion, not an improvement discussion. But when someone challenges me about an idea, that shows that we've got psychological safety and that people are actually trying to understand the concept and the why. And I'm okay with that. And I don't need the answer. Sometimes I'll say, do you know what? That's a great question. I actually don't know that answer. I'm going to learn it. And then we're going to come back to that. And being that vulnerable part of learning, because I'm a learner as well. Many of these concepts I've never done before. I just have to upskill myself and my leadership team to get there. So to walk in there and pretend like I'm the expert is actually a flawed process, initially.
Do we have, one of the things that some of the leaders will say to us is, I mean, so powerful what you're saying, because the leaders will say to me, you know what? They need to see me messing up and thinking
Yeah.
about it, making adjustments, and me learning how to do this. Um, so that's what we talk about. They have to model it. They have to see them doing, they have to live it. And we did an episode about how to lead like Oprah, but it was really about showing versus telling,
Yeah.
about they need to. And so the principal, he changed, we've got an Unleashed Learning TV episode, but he literally changed the staff room to mirror the key of classroom from the Unleashed Learning perspective. So when people walked in, it was how he understood what that meant. So he just was living it. He was
Yeah.
just, I'm just going to live it. I'm going to mess up. I don't know it all the time, but we're going to do this together. And the vulnerability and the community that's built from that. See why you're on the show, Stephen? I read your book and I'm like, we got to talk. Okay. So I am mindful of time, but there's so much to talk about here. We're really at those early stages of change
Yeah.
and bringing the team together. And you're really clear about who to bring, who you're starting to bring. We talk about a leader's first approach.
Yeah.
I want to ask this question. This is a big one. Now, in the era of overwhelm,
Yeah.
chase is on. Now it's
Right.
literacy. And I'm not demeaning any of this, okay? Now it's literacy. Now AI. Now well-being. Now don't forget that thing. So to hold change long term takes courage and
Yeah.
focus. How does a leader keep that success team going in the era of overwhelm? Now, in Unleashed Learning, it's a 3-year process, right? So it's like sustained. How do we keep that success team going in the era of overwhelm?
I think leaders have more agency than they give themselves credit for. And so we're in a space where we have levels of pressure coming down, some real and some perceived. We have levels of pressure on ourselves and we have levels of pressure coming from our community. Now, that's where we can start to feel this overwhelm because we start to go, well, which pressures are the ones that I need to pay attention to? And often we don't label them, we just feel them. You've got an email come from your, direct manager saying, here's a new initiative. We'd love for you to look at this and can you talk about it at the next meeting? Got your community coming in saying, well, what's going on with this process or my child, etc. You got your teachers going, well, hang on a minute. Are we doing maths? Are we doing it? But I think what leaders actually don't give themselves a lot of credit for is many of those pressures are perceived pressures.
Wow.
And what I mean is, let's imagine that nothing was done today. There was absolutely no decisions made. Everyone turned up at your school. You managed the surprise events and the behavior issue that popped up over there, or the sick teacher that called up over here, and maybe an email from a parent, but you didn't make any big decisions on improvement that day. Is the school broken?
Mm.
And the answer is no. And that's okay. Now, it doesn't mean we can do that every day. But if we actually step back and ask ourselves, and I often talk about this with my staff, when this level of urgency starts to come up, and one of my middle leaders comes in and goes, oh, I was in coaching this person today and they didn't do their fluency task. I think we need to have a chat to them. All right, let's just stop for a minute. Is it broken? And the answer is often no. I'd say 99% of the time. Okay, well, that's something we can actually do. We can fix that, but it's not something that actually needs to be actioned today with a level of urgency that we're feeling at the moment. So it just brings us back to the reality of going, everything is okay. We need to do some things, but we have time to think, we have time to plan, we have time to reflect. Why is this teacher not doing their fluency task? What coaching have they had? Do they understand the task? Were they doing it and they've decided not to? Like, let's go in there with a really clear understanding of why we're going in there first and give that teacher an opportunity to have some voice around why that may or may not be happening before we make those decisions.
I got to ask this question then,
Yeah,
Stephen. Does that mean, are you saying that this is what I'm hearing? Is if we're going, now there's different kinds of improvement, right? There's
yeah,
little improvement. Okay. When Unleashed Learning comes, it's a big improvement. Now, I shouldn't say it's moving the whole school from good to great teaching. And so
yeah,
this is a longer term. You're saying that you got to keep, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm trying to make sure I get it.
yeah,
You're saying keep the eyes on the prize and determine, is this urgent? Is this really the pressure or not?
yeah.
Is
This
this a
is,
choice we can make or not? Does this really, or does it fit into where we're going
yeah,
rather than being reactive, being proactive to see where these things fit? So if there's a teacher that's not doing the fluency piece, in the big scheme of things,
yeah,
we're still going in the North Star or Southern Cross. We do need to address that, but we're still going. The train's still going. Is that what you're saying?
yeah. And that's a lower level sort of issue, but you get higher level ones. Oh, Steve hasn't done his planning for a week. Okay, well, again, no one knows that except for us that's checked the planning out. So let's have a think about how we want to approach this because, we need to understand if we go in with the heavy fist,
Yeah.
are we going to get the result we want? Probably not. Um, but then if we think about longer term, and one of the barriers I hear, and I'm sure you hear this all the time from leaders, is I don't have enough time,
Time. Yep. Yeah.
right? Now, one of the challenges I have with that is time is a reality. So the principal down the road has the same amount of time I have in the day. I have the same amount of time as you. Now, within that time comes different things that we could look at differently. For instance, many years ago, I was a teaching principal. So I taught 2 days a week and I had 3 days a week to do roughly the same amount of improvement work and admin work and accountability work as the school down the road where the principal didn't teach. So my reality, even though we have the same amount of time, my reality of time was a little bit different to the principal down the road. But then my agency was, okay, well, I'm teaching for 2 days a week. So I've got 3 days. How am I going to use those in the most efficient and effective way to get the improvement I desire? Plan A, plan B. I've got teacher, non-teaching principal, might have 3 to 5 priority areas. Teaching principal, well, I can't do that because I'm teaching 2 days a week, but I'm not going to use that as a barrier. Instead, I'm going to do two things really well.
Mm.
And
So
that's
it's
my
really that.
agency. That's my choice.
It's really I mean, I write about that in the book about in the era of overwhelm, what's happening with time.
Yeah.
And that's why we use a staged approach over 3 years because that staged approach helps that thing going. But it's also the decision about how am I going to use the time that I've got, and that's not shaming anybody. It's just
No, no.
because schools and these are busy locations, but decisions have to be made about where we're using that time.
And it's acknowledging the reality of every different context and environment that you go, okay, well, improvement is improvement. Improving simply just targeting numeracy versus numeracy, literacy, well-being, etc., whatever we're doing. If that is what I can commit to and do really well, that's better off in my couple of days that I'm not a teaching principal than trying to do everything and doing it poorly. And that's where the agency of the leader comes in. And I think we have to acknowledge that I actually can make that decision. And I can say confidently, do you know what? I want to do that, but that's going to be next term. And I'm okay with that. Right now, within the time I have, these are some really clear targets that I can support my team in leading with the time that I have.
It's one of the reasons in the book I talk about why there's a new way forward, and the idea then is how this stuff comes together so that we're not chasing literacy here, well-being here. It actually, the system brings it all together
Mm.
for a certain kind of outcome. And so then when those things come, they fit. And so it kind of stops the chasing a little bit as well and keeps us focused. And that, again, why I wanted to interview you. I just want to ask one last question, actually two last questions, if that's
Yeah.
cool. I want to ask, um, how, I mean, we kind of addressed it, but let me just ask you, how did you keep impact enduring? So, meaning if you had change going and we're now in this era of overwhelm, what did you do to sustain the change? Or what do you do to sustain the change?
Well, and I guess through the number of schools that I've led, I'm comfortable with the sustained impact that we've had, and that ebbs and flows for various reasons, staff changes, but improvement is a continuum, and it's the mountain you never get to the top of. And again, you have to be okay with that because improvement happens in micro moments
Yeah.
and micro steps to get to the bigger improvement. One of the traps we can get into, and if we talk about NAPLAN, which is a measure for almost every school, don't have to like it or love it. It's a reality, and that's what we get measured on in our performance reports. If I focus on where I want to get to, and that's my target, I actually lose the micro moments of improvement that's going to get me there. And one thing that I really work on with my team is by the time we get to our NAPLAN results, we should all have a really comfortable understanding of how well we're going to go.
Yeah.
And that's because we incrementally are leading the work and measuring those micro moments and celebrating them or adjusting as we go, not leading the work and let's see what our results are.
Well, you're using I mean, what I'm hearing is a staged approach to
Yeah.
that so that it's not there. It's a staged approach,
Yeah.
which we do a lot of work around from that. So,
And it
okay.
doesn't stop. Like
No.
we don't get there and go, we've achieved it. If you've achieved a high performing status, well, now the target is to keep it. And if you haven't, the target is to get to the next level. So you're just always adapting and adjusting that work. But I recently wrote an article on my LinkedIn about juggling, and we think of this idea of juggling that all the balls are in the air at once, but they're not. They're rotating through your hand. So if we think about it in that way, juggling, what's in your hand at the moment? That could be your target, but then shortly you're going to throw that up and keep it in the air, but the next one's going to be there. So
Right.
how are you managing those balls as they go around in that cycle and keeping the ones in the air that need to be, because I'll get to them when they land in my hand. But what's there now? And that's the work I'm going to do.
And the book I talk about how to get those lessen the
Yeah.
balls, show you what they
Yeah.
are. Okay, here's the very last question, and this is the question. So I'm guessing you got a lot on your plate. I'm guessing you're a busy person, and I really want to know, what do you do either proactively or when it's hitting to get you, if you feel overwhelmed, or stop you from being overwhelmed in this new era where we're just flooded with information and next book is out, the new thing is, how do you limit the overwhelm for you?
First, it's understanding, and I talk a little bit about this in my book, but more so, in my own sort of world when I'm out and about, is around the very first and most important leader is yourself.
Mm.
You have to understand self before you can lead others. And that understanding keeps growing. I'm always learning more about myself and leaning on skills that I hadn't lent on before, deactivating or activating different strategies that I may not have used before, and wondering why that didn't work this time, but it did last time. So the more you understand your own well-being, your own self, your own management, because we all walk into a school every day, and I talk about cognitive load. If you imagine that short-term memory is a cup, and everyone's cups are different size, and sometimes when you walk in the morning, your cup's already three-quarters full, and if you don't recognize that, that's going to spill very quickly, and then what's going to happen is often an emotional or dysregulated response. And we've got to think about that as our staff as well. Someone's at home and their husband's really sick, or the kids are sick, or they've got marital issues, or whatever it is. They could be walking into your staff room and their cup's already at the top.
Yeah.
And so we have to understand that the management of self comes before the management of others, and that's got to be modeled. So how I manage self is I understand when I'm starting to get to the point of overwhelm, and there's a lot of little strategies I use. Um, like one of them that's really easy to implement is a thing called chunking.
Yeah.
And so when I come in the morning, I've got half an hour booked where I don't answer the phone, I don't answer the door unless it's an emergency, and people understand. They've got a little sign on my door going, just in a meeting. And what I do is I do half an hour of emails,
Mm.
chunk it into a half-hour block, because what I'd find if I start to get overwhelmed, I'll do 2 minutes of that, 2 minutes of that, 2 minutes of that, 2 minutes of that. I feel like I've achieved nothing, and then I'll come back to the emails. Half an hour, I delete emails, I write my list of who I need to get back to, I respond to any short ones that don't take a lot of heavy thought. Then I stop, and my email chunking is done for that period of time. And if for some reason there's an emergency and it gets interrupted, I don't forget that. I move that to another point. And then I might chunk my instructional work where I go, right, I'm going into the classrooms for the next hour, and that's what I'm focusing on. And then I have time to do the paperwork after that. So there's little strategies that I put in place for myself. And then when they fail, it's because often my cup's full.
So
So
it's
then I can
really,
go, right, I'm referring back to this. Hang on a minute. I need to structure my day again and bring it back to segments of time that I can actually feel like I've achieved something, because that's the first thing that helps empty the cup a bit, is going, oh, I actually got something done then. I've caught up with my emails, or I've been able to do my analysis of this, or provide the feedback to the staff member that I did an observation on last week that's been sitting there. But I go back to structuring my day that suits me in a way that chunks it. It's achievable, but I also get some success, and I feel better because I'm going, right, I'm actually getting somewhere, instead of the bit of that, 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 take the phone call, go see the kids, speak to the business manager, my AP comes in, then call that person. What was I doing over there? I'm not sure. And next thing, I'm more overwhelmed because I've got those layers just continuously building.
we call it leadership from the inside out, and you have awareness about yourself. And what we do at Unleashed Learning is put the structure around people, so they have rituals and procedures around what makes learning stick. And so you have self-knowledge, self-reflection to, and probably what I hear is values for the outcomes you're after. I'm not putting words in your mouth, that I'm just listening to this. So,
And I think it's understanding the difference between pressure and stress.
mm,
If you can distinguish in your work, like we're in a high pressure job in schools, it's high pressure, both perceived and actual, and we talked about that earlier. But it doesn't always have to be high stress. Now, I have stressful days, I have stressful weeks, I have stressful terms, but that's a small percentage of my job. But I have a lot of pressure, and I have to, I'll go back to agency. I have to have agency around how I manage that pressure in a way that is going to suit me. Like you said, what are the structures I can build into my day that allows me to manage that, manage self, because the better I manage self, the better I'm going to manage my team and
it's a
lead them.
perfect way to end this episode. I really appreciate your time. I think for people contemplating that process of getting ready for school improvement, for advancing teaching learning, or maybe they're in the middle of that to reflect, I think it's a really great episode to hear from you. So, Stephen, congrats on the book. Thank you for
Yeah,
being here.
thanks.
I look forward to staying in contact.
Absolutely. And congratulations on your book. It's, like I said, I was very, very pleased I came across it. Such a really great resource.
Thanks, Stephen. We'll talk to you soon.
Will do.
Bye.